Yeah, I don't see him on the participants list, but if he shows up, he can give us a update.
That sounds great. Okay. So, can you scroll up a little bit? So this is all old business. Is there anything? All right. Grape 1 redeployment, uploading Grape 2 Eclipse
Actually, I did
data.
on the participant list, but I'd hate to put him on the spot.
Okay. And then, well, I think all of these things look really good, Rachel. I think the other thing that we should do we have on here, working towards writing a paper with the data we have from the eclipses.
We should probably put that on there. We do have this as well,
Yeah.
which is due painfully soon.
Yes. I think, okay. I think for number 3, I'm going to end up not having the bandwidth to do number 3, unfortunately, for
Okay.
this. But I think 4 we can add, we definitely want to talk about writing a paper about the eclipses with the data we have. And maybe we can have some discussion about AGU.
Probably I don't know.
Do we want to try to put together a paper on the Gammon storm as well?
Maybe. I think that's also a Peter question for this, though.
That's what?
I think if we had collected a little bit more previously, that's a very similar topic.
It is a very similar topic. I just don't think we're going to be able to. I looked through the folder the other day, and there were some things in there. I think we have enough data to write something, but I don't know that we have all the data we don't have it all pulled together in order to be able to do something properly for June 24th.
Well, should I try to write like a blurb for the for just the grape stuff?
Do you think you can get something together that would be appropriate for that in time?
I don't know. I've never written a
I haven't either.
feeling.
I mean, if it's something that interests you and you think you can speak to it well, I think
It would be kind of a pity not to have the ham radio data kind of style stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's a unique data set.
Yeah.
And I also demonstrates it's part of the, ham radio service to
I think if you want to try to put something together that could speak to that, I think that would be really nice.
Okay. I will try.
Okay. I'll do my best to edit and suggest as you need help. But I think my bandwidth between now and June 24th is very limited.
Yeah. Is there anything paper may file response in notice PS docket. Electronic filers may file using the internet by accessing the ECSS. Okay. That's going to be a can of worms that I open a little later. This is on my after CEDAR list in case of CEDAR break glass.
That sounds good. Well, I guess, yeah, why don't you go ahead and start with the agenda, Rachel, and then we can go from there.
Quick question, Rachel, which project are you going to be working on here shortly?
The governmental report, the May
Yes,
7th
the
or 11th.
FCC submission. It's due in a couple of days.
It is.
Okay, I'll send you something. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Shall we, let's see. So we have this is mostly old business and there's no one here to comment on Grape 2 updates. Do you want to talk a little bit about the Eclipse paper, Dr. Frizzell, or do you just want to maybe make an outline for it and come back to it next week?
Well, why don't we talk about it a little bit? We can start doing some outlining here. So I think this Eclipse paper is going to be a really important part of this project because that's one of the things that we said we would do. And it also can help your PhD as well. So I think one thing we have to kind of figure out, I guess we kind of want to figure out the scope of the paper. Yeah, it'd be nice to basically say, this is the data that we've collected. And we should be able to say, I think, how much of the eclipse we were able to see. So because we got data from over the entire United States and other places as well. So I think we want to figure out how we present that in a useful manner.
Hey, Nathaniel, this is Chris Orman.
Yes, Chris.
Does AGU have a letters form of publication?
They do. There's geophysical research letters, GRL.
I wonder if, like, to get this initial data out and get it out in a timely fashion, I wonder if the first paper really should be in the form of a letter, followed up by a much more detailed paper.
That's certainly an approach.
So Rachel, why don't you take a look at what the requirements are in the formatting for the letter as well as a full paper, because it might be just easier to get a letter out. And this certainly would be timely. So I think it would meet that requirement.
Yes, it definitely would.
And they all count the same, Rachel. So
Can't you?
in fact, you could argue that the letters have a more cachet because they generally are reserved for publications that need rapid release.
I agree with all of that.
Plus, there's a page limit, so it makes it a little usually 4 pages or something like that. So
yeah, they GRL is limited to 12 publication units. So a publication unit is either 500 words or 1 figure.
Wait, so every figure we use cuts our
Cuts your paper down by 500 words. So yes, the figure's worth 500 words. But you can be very creative with your figures. Your figures can have subfigures. So this is where you end up having very complicated subfigures that have panels A, B, C, D, and E. Because a panel, 1 figure with 5 subfigures is only worth 1 publication unit, where 5 separate figures is worth, 5 times that.
Oh.
So I think usually with the GRLs, one of the first things to do is to figure out what your figures are going to look like. You want to be able to tell some sort of a story with the figures. I've had a lot of luck with starting my papers with some sort of a map to kind of explain what we're looking at, where we're looking, where the instrumentation is, what the images are. My eclipse paper from the 2017 solar eclipse QSO party, that's a GRL. So you can look at that as an example.
And one reason I brought this up was because I think the community might be expecting some kind of a publication like this, given the fact that the eclipse just recently happened, and there's got to be a bunch of data that would be of interest to the community that would be kind of a bummer if they had to wait for a full paper to come out.
I completely agree with that.
There's politics involved here. This is like putting the flag into the ground. So we have a proposal out there that's being reviewed. So
I 100% agree with what Chris is saying.
okay. I can help you too, Rachel, because you're going to seek me out for reimbursement anyway. So, and they're back up and running. And yes, the towers are going up today. In fact, right after this meeting, I'm going to run out there and get pictures of the crane that's used to put them up. So
that's exciting.
That's fair. I do also need to talk to you about shipping for return Grape 2s as well.
sure.
And what the way to do, whether or not there's a campus online account that can produce shipping labels, or whether or not I need to go talk to the campus FedEx with the speed type.
And making sure they actually come to the right place on campus and not get lost and stuff like that. But we'll talk about that. Yes, let's set up a meeting. So.
Okay. Okay. But actually, since I saw Kung sneak in, is there any update really fast on getting the Grape to Eclipse data?
Oh, hi. So I actually managed to able to down sample the full bandwidth 8 kilohertz digital RF data down to 10. So now the size is actually 20 megabytes, which is very reasonable to be uploaded. So I think that can be regularly uploaded to the Alabama server, and then when the grapes are sent back with the hard drive, we can upload that full bandwidth data locally, so that it doesn't burden most people home network too much with the 3.3 gigabytes daily upload. Now I just gotta make sure that my DSP block for that down sampling is appropriate, because right now I think the output is very noisy. That's the last thing you need to do with this down sampling script.
And one more thing, your call sign, so I can stop writing your name.
That's right. It's Kilo Charlie 3 Uniform Alpha X-ray.
Oh, that is perfect. QSL?
That's right.
Typing that instead.
Yep.
Better. Okay. Anything else then on the Eclipse paper? I will hopefully include Grape 1 and 2 data then.
That sounds good. Yeah, do you want to work on an outline and then come back next week? Do you want to talk about the outline at all now?
We could. I think I'm gonna pull up the. See if there's a proposed format or anything with the GRL.
So do you have LaTeX templates?
I'm a math person, so I'm kind of addicted to LaTeX.
I thought you would like that. So AGU does have a LaTeX template.
Okay.
They have one template for all of their journals, and there's a little switch in there where you switch it over to a GRL. And the geophysical research.
Okay.
Letters, author guidelines. So I'll put the link in the chat for the journal. That's the link for GRL. And then they should have information. If you click about, so if you click that link and then you click about, you can see there's an author's resources section.
Did find that.
Great. Often, if I'm looking to find things rather than clicking through their website, I end up going to Google and I'll type things in like geophysical research letters LaTeX template, and then see what comes up through Google that way.
I want to make sure I'm not missing anything, but I guess I can also do this later.
Yeah.
19 publication units. I take it that's the 500 words in the
Yeah. Where does it say 19? I think it's 12.
frontier articles in geophysical research letters only.
I don't think you're a frontier article.
There isn't a separate one on reply commentary. Oh, research articles. Never mind. Probably
Yes.
5 public. Wait, no, I'll check into this later.
Here's text and graphics requirements.
And not just the GRL. I think it's probably falls under research letters, which is 12 publication units.
Yes, that would be the one.
They just have all of them on the same page.
Right. Yeah, GRL is 12.
The only one geophysical research letters is like 19. I'll just look into it later. That's its own can of worms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And usually people usually say like 4 figures for GRL. So 4 figures, and then use the remaining 8 publication units for writing. Now, in 2017, they actually had an entire special issue of GRL all for eclipses in 2017. And so that's actually probably a nice place to look to get a feel of what many different GRL articles related to eclipses might look like. Let's see if I can find that eclipse special issue. Here's the link to that. So you can look through and you can get a good feel of the different writing styles people may have that all got accepted to GRL. You get a feel of the different way people lay out their figures and what they choose.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. That should give you a lot to think about.
That should. Okay.
Did you get a chance to show people your poster? Show people on here your poster from CEDAR and talk about how CEDAR went for you?
Sure. I guess.
Yeah, because last week, Rachel, 8 Scranton students, Bill Engelkey, Jesse Alexander, one of Jesse Alexander's students, and I all went to San Diego for a week for the CEDAR conference. And I think it went very well. All the students presented posters. A number of them also gave oral presentations. I gave a talk that also showed Eclipse Grape type data. I think it went really well. So Rachel had a very nice poster. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience, and you can walk us through your poster, because that will also, like, your poster is probably also a good thing to think about in terms of the paper too.
Okay. Hmm.
For the record, I was there too, virtually.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I heard you in the Maker Club session.
Yeah, I was glad I could make it there. Not all the sessions had Zoom links. Unfortunately, the Eclipse session, Gareth hadn't set one up, but
Right.
got to a lot of them. And for future reference, if people are interested, virtual is free.
Okay. Back this out a little bit. Oops. Although then you can't really read it at all. I don't know if the intent here is to read it or just to get a overview. But for the most part,
Why don't you post the link to the poster?
I don't know if it's online. Hang
I
on.
have,
It's a PDF on the CEDAR website, isn't it? I think I
can work.
downloaded it.
Rachel, I can work on posting a link to it. You can go ahead and keep talking. I'll get that posted in a second.
Okay. I'm not sure if I remembered to put a link.
I have it on my OneDrive too, so I can just post my OneDrive version of it.
Okay. It's doing weird formatting things in PDF mode. But that's okay. For the most part, everything was focused on the Eclipse for this data and the Grape 1 and Grape 2 network data. So there's kind of an overview for science people who aren't necessarily very familiar with the Grape project and kind of what our map looked like during the October eclipse, and a nice overview of our Grape 1 and 2 data and the kind of variety of instruments that we have, especially with the Whisper stations incoming. So I don't know if I really need to go through the this is how we collect Doppler data spiel with you guys. And then most of the figure space is dedicated to eclipse data. It's compared to most things we look into this call, it's probably fairly stock and standard. I don't know if it's that interesting to you
No,
guys. It shouldn't be too much of a surprise if you've been on the Grape call for the
but it's
last.
still, I think it looks really good, Rachel. I think it's really nice to see how nicely you really put together a very nice poster here. And I think it's nice that everyone knows that you actually went out and presented this out in California. So I think this is really good.
Yeah, I think the people I did talk to responded pretty well to it, because a lot of times at CEDAR, I'd hate to say the graphs aren't very intuitive, but you go and they're conglomerated graphs and you ask like 10 leading questions, and you eventually get to the point where you're like, okay, I kind of know what your graph is actually showing now. And this one is very literal, so you can just actually walk people through the Doppler shift and what that means. And I think people responded surprisingly well to just being able to understand what was going on pretty quickly. I did have one request to start producing plots in as velocity plots instead of Doppler shift plots,
Yeah.
because I think that's pretty typical for physics people.
You know, one thing I think we've been how should I say this? One thing we should keep in mind with these things is that the velocity
Right.
of the what's that?
Well, because I did warn them that sometimes it feels like a velocity would be an appropriate measurement, but during like rapid deionization times, I'm not sure if that's really the most appropriate conversion.
Well, we have to. I think it could be appropriate, but I think one of the things that we haven't considered in any of this that we probably do need to consider is how the phase velocity changes as the radio signals go through the ionosphere. So this was really the answer to Gerard's problem at the beginning of CEDAR. So my student Gerard Piccini, he's been working with Bob McGuire and myself. They're actually in the other room working on this right now, creating a low power ionosonde using an EDIS radio. And they sent up little chirps during the eclipse and made vertical height measurements of the eclipse. And when you plotted that as a function of time, the heights that Gerard got, they were about 100 kilometers higher than HMF2, which you would download from the ionosondes. And what we didn't account for was the group delay that the ionosphere puts onto the signal. So if you realize that you're just basically plotting what's called virtual height, then that's the appropriate answer. But if you're actually trying to get the actual height of refraction, you need to account for these other things as well. And so we have not been accounting for that at all in our measurements. So it's something to think about.
Adding report details.
That's great.
Yeah, I think Jared and I'm gonna cheat a little bit and pull Kong's call sign down. I'll learn it. Kong gave a great talk on the Grape 2s as well.
He did. Kung, do you want to talk a little bit about your CEDAR experience?
Oh yes, yeah, it was great. There was actually quite a bit of people who came over to my poster and talk about just engineering of the project. And there was, of course, this person from the Happy project who was talking about making the data available. They provide a group of people that would like to provide like a common API to a lot of different science database, and they wanted to include the Alabama SOA as one of them. And I believe Tokyo said there's a proposal out there somewhere for this project. Yeah, and the talk itself was very cool as well. That the group, the makers talk, there were a lot of different talks that talks about just the engineering of the project instead of just the science as most of the conference was. But yeah, I thought it was very cool to share my progress with the rest of the community.
Maybe they didn't dominate, but they did a really, really good job.
Thank you.
But yeah, you can kind of, it feels like the amateur radio stuff is spreading.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to one of the Cedar student organizers this year, and they had to pull trivia night just for like scheduling stuff, and they didn't get it planned. And I was like, if we had known, we could probably have done a Cedar ham exam for the students.
Mm-hmm.
You could talk to them about that for next year, Rachel.
just pester them until there is also
I know there's a student organizing committee now too. So
yes.
So there are two student representatives, but there's also the student representatives are now having a committee. So if you volunteer to be on that committee, you have a chance to influence the sorts of activities that they're doing, and they might appreciate that.
That's fair.
Yeah. And I'm on the steering committee as well for the whole conference. So, and Gareth is as well now. So
well, just because I know a lot of people at CEDAR who have said in the past, like, oh, I want to get my amateur radio license. I just need to kind of put in the time and do it. And
yeah.
But I think a lot of them would be nervous to just like be and take an exam of any kind. School really matters years when it comes to exams. You hear exam and you're just like fight or flight.
And I know that professors get really nervous taking exams next to their students.
Yeah.
Okay, I think.
Are you trying to poke fun at me, Nathaniel?
No, I absolutely not.
Well, you're allowed to. You're allowed to. It's still the running joke that now the towers will be installed and Zorman will still not have a call sign. So
that's
in fact,
quite
I don't know if you all can see it, but they gave me an award here at Case for the help I put forth in getting HamSci the meeting in March. And they wanted to put a call sign there. It's probably backward on your screen, but it says call sign to be determined. And so I promised to keep this in the front of my desk to remind me that I still need to take that exam. So
you could probably pass without studying, Chris.
That's what they tell me. And when they tell me that, I get more and more nervous about not being able to do that. So they're not helping by telling me these things.
Usually
so what you should do is you could do what my wife did. They have all the online Zoom sessions these days. So you can just go to hamstudy.org. You can choose a virtual session. They happen because of the different time zones. You can find one like almost every hour of the day.
Right.
And you just show up there. You close your office door. Don't let anyone know what you're doing. And you just anonymously go into one of these sessions and try to. And then if you pass, you can come out and say, "Hey, I passed." And if you didn't pass, no one at your club needs to know.
Oh, that's outstanding. See, they wouldn't tell me this kind of stuff because they
So there's another trick you can do. If you read through the material, for the lower level licenses, there's not that much to know. You can read through the material related to the license an hour or two before the exam, and short-term memory will bring 90% of it back to you.
That's what they tell me. But when I'm reading through the material, I go into the details, and then I'm like, oh, this is pretty interesting. Let's look at this and that and the other. So anyway,
I will recommend if you do it online, New England SciTech, which is in the Boston area, they pioneered the online exams.
okay. Okay, sounds good. I don't want to hijack this meeting based on my inability to get that exam underway, but this is very useful info.
This is important. You're a PI. This is
I'm not denying any of that. It's just that you would think my helpers around here would have told me this, but they've hid this from me because they like to torment me on this stuff. So now I know I'll just show up one day with a call sign and they'll be all befuddled as to how I got it. And I'll just
well, I think they're trying to be helpful because usually we have enough people at Case that we can convene a session almost spontaneously.
Oh, I know.
Exam session probably sometime at field day if you stop by as
That was
well.
already promised to me. I heard that one too. So, and
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of the anonymous in your office. You can hide.
I got that. This is the first I heard about that. So now I'm.
There's one little item I wanted to mention to the group, dealing with the personal space with a station network. We realized we need another station status. There's going to be a few stations where the person retires the station, takes the station out of service, but we still want to keep the data and still have it available underneath that station. So I'm thinking what we need to do is have another station status where rather than when you're done with, say you want to retire a Grape 1 because you're putting an RX 888, something like that. You can move the station rather than deleting it, move it to retired status, and it won't show up as red on the map anymore. It'll show up as gray or something. So you still get to the data. You still see that it's there, but it's you're no longer getting pegged for being quote unquote offline. So we're going to look into doing something like that so that data will remain available. My student is doing an audit to make sure that we have that the database and the data we have match, and we're finding a few places where people just deleted a station, but their data is still there and some things like that. So we're probably going to call it something like retired, where it's been taken out of service permanently. But the data is still there. So just wanted to mention that.
That sounds good, Phil.
Rachel, I just sent you a copy of what I submitted to the FCC about the coronal mass ejection in May.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's a Word document plus PowerPoint for all the different graphs. Let me know if I can be of any help there.
Thank you. Just have been.
And I also wanted to, I see John Lauber is on WI6P. John, I am remiss in responding to your email. I wanted to say that thank you for sending the upload of your data. And I'm sorry we haven't had a chance to look at it much yet, but Rachel's going to be looking at that this weekend for working on the FCC request. And then I'm sure we will continue looking at this storm in the future. So thank you.
All right, you're welcome. I'm anxious to see what kind of useful information we can pull from those data. It's very interesting stuff. Thanks.
I suspect the amateur community gathered enough information via HAMSci and also the reverse beacon networks to make a major research paper.
Yes. Are people here aware most people here are aware of KP, but are people aware of something called DST and SIMH?
Nathaniel, again, aware of what?
Measurements called DST or SIMH. Are you aware of these things?
I am not.
Okay, so KP is what most amateur radio operators are aware of for looking at when there's a storm. So you know that if KP gets up to 6 or 7 or 8 or 9, then you have a geomagnetic storm, right?
Right.
But one of the problems with KP is that they only measure it every 3 hours. So it's not a very good measurement in terms of giving you any sort of temporal fidelity. So there's some other measurements that hams use, or not hams, that space scientists use when looking at geomagnetic storms. One is called the DST, which is the Disturbance Storm Time Index, and the other one is called SIMH, which is a Symmetric H Index. And those are both measured using magnetometers. And they also, the DST, they're essentially the same thing, but the DST gives you a 1 hour time resolution and the SIMH gives you a 1 minute time resolution. And
That's
let me
much better than 3 hours.
much better. And so what I'd like to see people start doing is that when you start putting in, trying to show data, and you say, oh, there's this geomagnetic storm that happened and we can see that it's in the Grape data, it's very hard to interpret that data if we don't also know where we are in the phase of the storm. So if we're able to put that data alongside DST or SIMH, it will really help us to interpret what the Grape data is doing. So I guess the next question is, where do you get SIMH and DST? So the DST is probably the easiest to get a graph of. If you go to, I can share my screen here for a minute. So if you Google Kyoto World Data Center DST, you get to the World Data Center Kyoto Geomagnetic Equatorial DST Index homepage. And you can find this real-time quick look DST index. It just gives it to you as a function of month. But so here you can see May 2024. See this crazy big feature right here? That's the geomagnetic storm, the Gannon storm. So the way DST works is usually usually DST is going to be close to 0. When the storm, just before the storm starts, you're going to see it spike positive a little bit. And that is because the nose of the magnetosphere, the part that's closest to the sun on the day side, that gets pushed in towards the Earth and moves those current systems closer to the Earth. So you see this positive impulse in DST. Then when the storm builds up, there are these ring currents out in space that get stronger, and they're going in a direction that causes DST to go negative. So this is now the main phase of the geomagnetic storm. So as DST gets down to minus 400 nanoteslas, this is quite a big storm. And then as the storm subsides, you see DST start to recover. So what you want to do whenever you're looking at your Grape data, in addition to looking at KP, go to this World Data Center website and see how your Grape measurements line up with this DST parameter. And more negative is a bigger storm.
Yeah, for reference, the DST for the Carrington event was about 3 times what this was, they estimate. A normal geomagnetic storm might be -50.
So like over here, that's a little geomagnetic storm getting down to -100. There's another little one right there. These are little ones over here, but that's the big Gannon storm. The other thing
I just happened to be watching as that happened. I saw the notice come through and saw how big a deviation that was and realized we had a big one. So that's when I sent out the notice to the HAMSI list.
The other one to look out for is something called the AE index, or the auroral electrojet index. So this is created using magnetometers near the auroral zone. And if you look at this, it's also organized by month. There you can see, so the AE is going to be AU, which is this top one, minus AL, which is this bottom one. So you can see that there's a little bit of a storm there. This is available on a daily basis. We go back to the 11th here. Yeah, there's the Gannon storm on the 11th. And so here's the 9th, May 9th, May 10th. So there you can start to see the aurora really starting to respond. These are measurements made with magnetometers on the ground under the aurora. So it's measuring auroral currents that are flowing in the auroral ionosphere. It went on for quite some time. All right, back to you, Rachel. Yeah.
That's Jerry. Are you familiar with the nowcast, the 30-minute and the 60 minutes that we can look at from Potsdam? Tamitha uses that quite a bit.
I'm a little familiar with it. Do you want to talk about that some more?
Well, it's just another, they break down the KP index and display it in either 1 hour and half hour, and you can see the changes, and instead of being averaged over all that time, which the KP does,
Yeah.
you get instantaneous with. Now I haven't went back to look to see what it looked like but I think even one of her reports she uses that quite a bit in her videos now, because it shows more instantaneous data as to how high it gets momentarily in these storms that we've been having lately. It's at kp.gfc. I'll post the link here in the chat, and everybody can go look at it.
Thank you.
Should it agree? This is 2020. Grabbed the wrong year. Yeah, I will point out SimH is a little bit, I don't want to say harder to get a hold of, but if you go to like, it's the same Kyoto website. They mostly have them on a little bit of a slower rollout. Oh, I needed to do +4. I will update. this plot. Okay. So that is most of what we had set aside, and we're just about at time.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Thank you for the link, Jerry.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to talk about?
I think that's it for now.
Perfect. We are ending on time.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Thank you, everyone. And good luck getting those towers up.
Yes, just in time for field day.
Are they going to have you hold them while they strap them into place?
I don't think so.
No. Well, stay safe and good luck with all of that.
Bye, everyone. 7-3.
Bye, everyone. Bye, Bill. Bye, everyone.
7-3.
Oh, I forgot.
7-3.